Hey everybody, this is Cameron, and today I have a very special guest, somebody that I honestly never thought would ever be here with me to discuss all things David Lynch and Twin Peaks. But I am so thrilled to have Scott Ryan, the editor in chief of the Blue Rose magazine and author of several amazing books here. We have Fire Walk with Me, Your Laura Disappeared, The Lost Highway, The Fist of Love, his newest Twin Peaks book, which will be available very soon, called Always Music in the Air, The Sounds of Twin Peaks. In my humble opinion, it seems like this is his most ambitious book yet in the Twin Peaks universe. Um, However, he also has written this very acclaimed sports book. I'm gonna probably mispronounce this name.
It's
Is it
Maslin.
Maslin? I was gonna say Macedonian, but it's Maslin. Maslin Against the World, and he made a big splash when his Moonlighting book came out. I remember when the creator of Moonlighting was retweeting it and stuff like that. So it's very exciting to have you here, Scott. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I always love to talk about Twin Peaks, and I'm excited to be here.
So let's just talk about this. The big news that happened last week. David Lynch is passing away. Where were you? How did you hear about this very sad news?
Well, it was kind of crazy because I was recording the audiobook for my new book. And then I looked down and I had a text, and someone said, David Lynch has died. And like, in some ways, I'm always working on things that are David Lynch tangent, but I couldn't believe I was literally doing something. I was in the middle of reading the Dean Hurley interview, and then I couldn't get back to recording it for a couple days. And when I went back, I just told people it's just going to be an audiobook where I just said I just found out David Lynch died, and I sort of talk about it a little bit, and then I go back into the interview because the book was finished in August, and obviously everything is written in present tense. So in the audiobook, I didn't want to go back and fix things or whatever. So it was weird, and then the doorbell rang, and the new book was on the doorstep. So it came that day.
Wow.
And normally when I get the package, I'm posting it online. It just didn't seem proper to do that day. But it was just kind of weird that it all happened in the same day.
Yeah, I opened up Instagram and there was the picture that Sabrina had posted of David Lynch with his guitar with his head down. And I just thought it was another cool picture that Sabrina was posting on social media. And then I read it and then I stopped and I said, did I just read what I thought it said? I read it again and that's when it hit me. And for 24 hours, I was in a complete daze. Now, I know a lot of people were even more emotional than that. Um, it, but I didn't know what to do with myself. I was just walking around in a daze all day long, and it was one of those things that I said earlier on a video. Kind of knew it was eventually going to happen. I mean, we all die eventually, but I just was not prepared for that moment, and it just the only thing that kind of saved me from being like completely depressed all day long was the enormous outpouring of love that was all over the internet. And I'm sure you've seen it too. Like, you can't go on any social media platform and not have your feed being bombarded with David Lynch stuff. Even if I follow a lot of people that talk about David Lynch, but I mean, there was like 500,000 posts on Twitter at one point. So it just kept going and going and going. And I mean, even that Bob's Big Boy statue in L.A., people are still bringing flowers, almost,
Sure.
a week later. So it's just, it's yeah, it was. I've never experienced a celebrity death that wasn't a family member. That hit so hard, and I think it's because we all grew up with him. Some of us started, in the
So
'80s.
when did you start? When did David Lynch come into your life?
Well, I had seen bits and pieces of his first three films. They had played Eraserhead on cable a little bit, but I was never up late enough to see it. I saw the first 5 minutes of The Elephant Man when that first hit HBO in the early 80s, but it like terrified me. And then Dune, I thought it was going to be like Star Wars. It's not. So I kind of got bored about 20 minutes into it. I was 8 or 9. But then when I was in middle school, this guy said, this campus monitor was like, "Hey, you like weird movies?" Because I was, I was up watching Five Corners and Clockwork Orange and things like that on cable. And he goes, "You need to see this movie called Blue Velvet." And I remember seeing trailers for it back in the mid 80s, but because the trailer, I didn't remember having too much dialogue. I know now it has the Dennis Hopper lines and stuff, but I don't remember too much dialogue in it. So I thought it was like some like foreign film, the way it was lit, and Isabella Rossellini with the robe and the wig and the knife. I remember all that. But he's like, no, it's about America. You got to check this out. So I got one of those video things where you get like 10 movies for $1. Yeah. And I signed away for it and got Blue Velvet pan and scan and popped it in. And first like 15-20 minutes I was like, yeah, this is good. I don't know where this is going, but this is good. And then by the end of it, of course, it's just like, you're like, this is incredible. But that was the greatest year, and I've mentioned this before, because it was January of 1990 when I saw Blue Velvet. So you have Twin Peaks coming out, you have Wild at Heart premiering in August, you have season 2 dropping, you have the Industrial Symphony coming out, the American Chronicles, it was just the year of David Lynch. So it was like, if there was any year to like just fall in love with the guy, that was it. Mm-hmm. And then I just followed his career from then on. I played Lost Highway at a theater I was managing at, so I still have the Mylars from it. And Straight Story, we played that as well. Saw Inland Empire in a little small theater with 40 people. That was a very interesting experience. It was packed. There was not a seat, everybody was there. And then, of course, obviously, when The Return came on, we were like, just like you, just watching it every week and talking about it every week. And I always tell people, if you've not seen season 3 in a while, go back to it now, because it, there's that famous saying, of course, about the, keep your eye on the donut, not the hole. But that whole time we were watching season 3 week to week, as great as it was, we kept seeing the hole like every week because we were focusing on what we were seeing. Now that the whole arc and what happens and all that, now we can see the donut, and it's a lot easier to appreciate than it was to be in the weeds in episode 12 trying to figure out what the hell's going on,
Right.
So how did you find David? Because I know you were, reading your Fire Walk With Me book, you were a huge fan already. There's that amazing picture of you, I think, at the outside a movie theater, and you have the picture there. So, like, how did you first get inundated with his work?
I saw Elephant Man as a little kid, and it scared me. I didn't know it was David Lynch, but I watched the whole film, and I totally missed it. I got it all wrong. Like, I didn't follow what that movie was about at all. It wasn't until I was a grown-up when I watched it again that I was like, this movie's about kindness. Why did this scare me as a little kid? But it just did. I thought the Elephant Man was the bad guy. And, I just couldn't process it because I was probably like 10 or something when I saw it. So it just made no sense to me.
Well, that whole opening is like a horror movie. Right, with her screaming and the elephants and all, right? The smoke and the baby sounds. It's it's very much a piece of Eraserhead.
And then I missed Blue Velvet completely, and it was starting Twin Peaks. So I watched Twin Peaks in 1990, and then saw Wild at Heart, and just from then on, Twin Peaks grabbed me hard.
So you saw Wild at Heart in the theater in the initial run?
Yeah, because I was totally that summer. Was it right? Was it between 1 and 2 when it came here, or was it the fall? Now I don't remember, but
it was August.
I worked at a video store,
August 19th. Yeah,
and when Wild at Heart came, my friend wanted the poster, and I gave it to him, and it still burns me because I would have kept it.
Yeah,
I
I
still
know.
have it today, and he doesn't have it, and it pisses me off. I didn't steal the Wild at Heart poster as
We
well.
had at my neighborhood video store, and this ticks me off as well. I had a giant cardboard cutout of Sailor and Lula, right? And it said David Lynch's Wild at Heart with cellophane, and then there was a side thing that came out, and it said check out David Lynch's other movies, and it had the video boxes of Eraserhead, Elephant Man, Dune, Blue Velvet on the sides. It was this huge thing. It was beautiful. And of course, I gave it to a girl that liked Twin Peaks, and I thought, oh, she'll like me and all that. And I never have seen her again. And now I can't even find that thing online to purchase because I would love to have that displayed, and I can't find it. And I think somebody did, but it wasn't available to be purchased. So
interesting. Well, I don't think we had that at Video Time. I don't remember that, Standy, because I would have probably stolen that as well. Because I loved Wild at Heart for many, many years. Wild at Heart was my favorite David Lynch film.
Yeah, that was one of the most incredible cinematic experiences I ever had. I saw it in this art theater with the giant red drapes. So when the opening credits were going, the fire was bleeding onto the red drapes. It was, and of course, coming off of Twin Peaks, and then you have the actors that are in Twin Peaks in Wild at Heart. Saw it, I believe, 5 times that initial run. The last 2 times they played it double feature with Pump Up the Volume. So
it's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, so it was just a double whammy right there.
In my book, The Last Decade of Cinema, which was my book before this one, is all about 90s films. And I do write about Pump Up the Volume because I think it's probably the best teenage movie ever made. I'm trying to think if there's a better one, but on the top of my head, I don't think there is one.
It kind of invents podcasting.
I know, yeah. Yeah, when you watch it now, it really does seem like it was predicting the future without them having any idea.
Yeah, although I guess I would love to be doing like a video podcast racing around town with Samantha Mathis driving a Jeep,
right. So, she would do it.
Yeah.
She'll do it.
I don't know about now, but yeah. So obviously, so you become this huge fan of David Lynch, and then are you at that point reading Wrapped in Plastic, or are you still like a lot of us, which was kind of like you're a David Lynch fan, but there's not a lot of David Lynch fans around you, so you kind of keep it to yourself?
Well, I mean, I don't know how much I kept it to myself because I made like a movie where I played Cooper.
Really?
And I made these other movies, and I always used Twin Peaks music. So I don't know if I kept it quiet, but I didn't know a soul who liked David Lynch. I mean,
yeah,
I had no idea. I did get invited to the first Twin Peaks Fest through the mail. I got a flyer, and that's one of my biggest regrets in life. I was too scared to go. I was 23. I didn't have the money. You have to fly from Massillon, Ohio to Seattle. It might as well have been in Japan or something. It was beyond my comprehension that I could get on a plane and go there.
Now, how did they know about you?
I'm sorry, what?
How did they know about you to send you that?
I've always thought about that, but I'm assuming it's because I bought the Star Picks.
Okay.
Through the mail. So remember those the cards that came in the little box. So right. I must have been on a David Lynch mailer.
That's
some way.
Cool. Right.
I don't know how they would know. I still have the I still have the whole thing. It's got my like address on it and everything from my parents' house. And I mean, I kept everything from back in that day.
Yeah. I have almost everything except for that Wild at Heart display, which drives me crazy. So you were probably just like us, right? Where after season 2 ends, you're thinking, oh, okay, that's it. And then later that summer, you get wind that they're making Fire Walk with Me. You're probably obsessing about when Fire Walk with Me is going to come out to the Cannes Film Festival. And I'm sure, again, you're hearing the news like we all were that like, oh, half the cast got cut out.
Right.
Like they started announcing that in the springtime before the film came out, almost to kind of prep us for it. And then when
Yeah,
the film,
that's when I think it was the TV Guide article, which I
yeah,
still have as well.
yeah, me too.
That's when I found out about the movie. I didn't realize they were making it. And in my Fire Walk with Me book, I think that's the biggest thing that I uncover that I don't think ever came out before is my interview with Greg Feinberg. I mean, I didn't know any of the things he told me about how Fire Walk with Me literally started the day after it was canceled, which is so weird because living through it, I just thought Twin Peaks was dead. There was no hope. And then when I heard about Fire Walk with Me, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I have that TV article too where it says David Bowie is playing a time traveling FBI agent. And I was remember thinking, what on earth? And
Right.
and
it has a little picture of Sheryl Lee.
Yes, it does. And then it talks about how, Audrey's out, Maura Kelly's in, and it's just going to be mutilation and titillation, it says. And I was like, oh my God, what are we in store for? Because, I kept thinking, of all the fire motifs in Wild at Heart, and I was like, oh my God, this thing's going to be crazy. And then there's very little actual fire in Fire Walk with Me. But yeah, I do want to say an apology to you.
Actually, let's think about this.
Yeah.
Is there any fire?
There's the gel on the little boy when he snaps his fingers. You see red,
it's not
right?
Fire though.
And then there's a teeny little bit of fire in the fireplace when Leland is pacing back and forth thinking about Teresa. The candles, of course, were cut out.
They were cut.
Yeah.
The candles were cut. I mean, that's kind of interesting. I never really thought about. I mean, one of the things that Ron Garcia told me in the interview was that they really wanted to make a ring of fire that they were going to try to have Bob and Mike Anderson walk through, and they just couldn't. He had to design a set to try to do that. But in the end, it got cut before they even. It's not. Don't worry, people. This is not a missing piece of the missing pieces. They never filmed it. They didn't have the budget. It just got cut. So that would have been fire. But I've never really considered that. You're right. For how often Lynch uses fire,
and the movie is literally called Fire Walk with Me.
There really isn't any fire in
it. I do want to issue you a public apology, though, because when I first read your Fire Walk with Me book, I was kind of taken aback because in the very beginning you're talking about the critics that really disliked it, and I remember being there at the time and hearing all the critics chatter and all that. But then you cite Roger Ebert as being one of the critics who disliked it, and I remember being on social media a few times trying to contact you saying like, I don't remember Roger Ebert ever reviewing this. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't remember. And so I remember talking with other Twin Peaks fans that you and I both know, going, "Am I crazy? Did Roger Ebert review this? Because I can't remember. I've never seen it." And they're like, "No, Roger Ebert didn't review it." And I contacted you again, going, I don't know about this. And then finally, I think it was 2 years later, I'm talking to John Thorne and I mention it. I'm like, and Scott mentioned his book that Roger Ebert disliked the film, but I've never seen Roger Ebert talk about the film. And John goes, "Oh no, I found this whole thing where he was on this alt TV cons thing where he was kind of a early internet message board thing talking about how much he disliked it." So in a way, I had never seen that, but he had never actually written a review for it, but he did technically review it. And on Facebook, I wrote you this long, which I don't know if you ever saw it, but I wrote this really long apology explaining what happened, saying I wasn't trying to be an asshole. I just had no idea that this had happened. And I just want to say publicly, you were right. And but
no reason to. But this is my thing that I don't understand about people on the internet. I can work on something for a year. Why point out what you don't like? Someone asked me what I do for a living, and I said, "Oh, I make things that other people can find something wrong with, and it makes them feel good." I mean, I feel like that's what I do. Like, people want to say, "You misspelled that. You got this wrong. You know, why don't you have Kyle MacLachlan in the Blue Rose? Why don't you have this? Why don't you have that? And it's like, bless social media. It's why I don't read. I never saw anything you said because I don't look at anything. Like when you said that day everyone was pouring out to David Lynch, I don't see any of that. I don't look at the internet because when I go to the internet, it's someone telling me that my book is ugly, my cover is stupid, you know, and I just don't understand that mentality. Why not lift up art instead of push down art?
Well, I wasn't trying to push you down by saying I was just saying if you had known about a review, I was just like going, I'd love to see it. But again, I do apologize
Well,
for
you don't have to apologize. I don't care. I'm just saying
well,
from my perspective, I mean, it doesn't bother me. I don't look. That's the thing. And I tell all my authors from the publishing company, like, don't read your reviews on Amazon. I've never read one review for my book ever. I never will for any of them. Stars don't matter. Likes don't matter. I mean, I post on social media all the time because I have to sell to eat, but I never look at a comment. I don't read them. Now, if someone sends me a message, then I will respond as a business owner. But it's just so weird to me how mean people can be on the internet to creators, and I don't. I that's so hard for me. I'm not saying that you're being mean by telling me I'm wrong, and it's good, John. Backed me up, but like I remember I posted in something that we had over purchased for the Blue Rose because we kind of hoped it was going to be bigger. And so I sold them for 99 cents. And someone said, well, I paid full price and you blank raped me. And I'm like, you're saying that about in the Twin Peaks group that's all about sexual abuse? Like I just don't, it just drives me crazy. Like that's why I try not to interact with strangers, or I just put my work out there and y'all do what you want with it.
well, as somebody who used to run a very large Twin Peaks page, I can say that there are the people who generally love, that world and universe, and then there's the people who will that will go after any small detail that you don't have correct. So, I mean,
It breaks an author's heart to make a mistake like that, you know. Um, I don't want to get something wrong. I'm trying so hard to get everything right. And in this new book with 290 music tracks, I mean, the chances of me getting something wrong are pretty high, but I'm really trying not to.
Well, like I said to you today on social media, and so I know you did see this. I think this is your most beautiful cover yet. It is gorgeous.
Thank you.
And I am very excited about you posted this a while back, just the chapters. I'm not sure if you added any more or whatever, but this was what you initially posted. And I, as a fan, like I'm really excited because while I know other your books, have basically what I'm trying to say is this book I feel like touches on a part of the Lynch canon that does not get reported enough on. And so it's one of the reasons why I'm really excited. Also, I know you have such a deep appreciation for Angelo Badalamenti and Dean Hurley and all that. So I really can sense your passion in this book, even though I haven't read it yet. Like I can already tell the way you talk about it. You're very proud of this book, which makes me really excited because that means that you have like a certain amount of confidence in this book. Not that you didn't have it before, but like
I know.
but
I
there's
don't know that
something.
I ever have confidence.
No, but but it's almost
Ever.
like now that you've published other books now, now not that you didn't know what you were doing before, but now you feel like I get it. You go, okay, I've done this before.
No, I never feel that way about anything I do.
Oh, really?
It always starts with a blank white page,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just as scary every time because you're like, oh, what do I know? Why am I saying something different? It's why I try so hard. It's why I don't read anything anyone else writes about Twin Peaks, because I never want someone to say I stole that from them or whatever. I try to do all my own research. In this book, I am quoting a couple of David Lynch quotes and a couple of Angelo quotes because, Angelo's gone and David would never give an interview. I have a better chance of getting an interview with him today than I did a month ago. But so there's maybe 3 quotes in there, but beyond that, all the quotes in the book I get. That's the way I like my books to be. I try to do my own research, my own interviews. So when people get one of my books, you're getting all new stuff, not regurgitated stuff.
That's fantastic. Well, since you mentioned Angelo, why don't you tell us the amazing story about how you got his blurb on your Fire Walk With Me book? I think you said something about he wasn't sure if he could do an interview at that time, but he gave you this blurb because he was so happy with the way the book turned out.
Yeah, I mean, I went back and forth with him a few times trying to get an interview, and he just kept saying he wasn't up for it. He was ill. He was at that time dying, and he just didn't feel he could do it. And I regret not pushing him because I respect him so much. I wish I would have said, Angelo, if you're not doing well, that's why you should do this interview. Let's capture your memories before it's too late. But I just didn't want to be that way.
Right.
But I should have probably. I don't know if it had made a difference. And so I sent him the chapter that I wrote on the music of Fire Walk With Me. There's one chapter in Fire Walk With Me where I picked like 6 or 7 songs. And I talked about it, and I just wanted to be sure I got it right. I didn't want it to be wrong. So I said, could you look this over? And then that was his response. He said, no one has ever understood my music better than you. And I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, is there any way I can use that as a blurb?
You're right.
Of course. So that was really incredible that we had that. And then he died like weeks later. I mean, so it was crazy. I mean, he was definitely dying when I was trying to get that interview, which I know you don't. I mean,
you didn't know.
I mean, I don't know, but there's so many questions I had for him. And then I think he did ask me for questions. That's right. And I sent 20, and they were good questions. Because I was kind of hoping that would have him realize, oh, this guy really, I wasn't going to ask like, oh, how'd you write Laura Palmer's theme? Oh, David sat next to me and he said, now the wind is coming. If I hear that story again, it's not in my book. Right. The story of how they wrote Laura Palmer's theme is not in my book.
I think
to death.
Yeah, I think we're alike in this way. Whenever I'm about to interview, let's say, a celebrity, I'll watch or read. Maybe you don't do this, but what I do is I'll watch or read a few of their big interviews, and I'll make sure that I don't ever ask any of those same questions because a lot of people will just have those stock answers.
Yeah,
and you want to. Can you give us maybe a preview of one question you asked him that obviously he didn't answer, but what was one of the questions that
I mean, I don't specifically remember because they were about Fire Walk With Me, but it was probably like how I find that Fire Walk With Me is so much more grown up than Twin Peaks musically. And so it was questions like that, like how did you make the leap to moving forward, keep the jazz feel, but also become much more complex? The music of Fire Walk With Me, the way I like to describe it is Twin Peaks music is like being in high school, and Fire Walk With Me music is being in college. The music is much more complex. The chord progressions are out of this world. All those songs should be jazz standards. There's no reason that jazz artists shouldn't be doing like Don't Do Anything I Wouldn't Do. Like you should go to jazz club and a trio should be playing that. I always think Michael Bublé should be singing Sycamore Trees, or John Pizzarelli or Diana Krall. I don't understand why these songs have not become standards. It blows my mind. So it was questions about that, like the growth that happened, because there wasn't a lot of time between it.
Oh no, it was I think it was the fastest feature film Lynch made from. I mean, by the time they started writing it, it was premiering less like 11 months later.
Yeah, Wild at Heart actually beats that. But yeah,
Oh, really?
Wild at Heart, and I go through this in my book because part of what I do in my book, one of my favorite chapters in this is the 1989 chapter, because that year is absolutely insane. And with the help of the great Josh Eisenstadt, we have pieced together what David Lynch did in 1989.
Mhm.
And according to my interview with Dwayne Dunham, when they were editing the pilot in May,
Right.
that's when David Lynch found out he was going to do Wild at Heart, and he's filming it in October.
Right.
And he had no script, no nothing in May, and he starts filming it like October 11th. So that is a crazy turnaround,
Yeah.
and then it's done by
May.
November. Well, filming like
yeah.
end of November, December. He directs episode 2 of Twin Peaks in December, and then edits it, and it comes out in Cannes in May, and the pilot comes out in April. So they did all that. Dwayne goes through and tells that story of them having 2 editing bays. He had a bay for Twin Peaks where he's directing the pilot, or I'm sorry, episode 1. Dwayne Dunham directs episode 1 and edits it, plus edits the pilot, plus edits the feature film Wild at Heart.
Right.
All of them are doing that music at the same time, with Angelo scoring all of those things.
That's why I always feel like Cool Catwalk was like a rejected track from Twin Peaks.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and those are the things that I go through in the book to connect those. You can't separate Twin Peaks from Wild at Heart from Industrial Symphony,
right,
to Floating into the Night. They're all one big soup.
Absolutely. I remember. I always say that when Criterion eventually releases the 4K of Wild at Heart, Industrial Symphony will probably be a special feature.
And you know what? I don't think the Criterion's going to release the 4K of Wild at Heart ever.
You don't think so?
No, it's one of the other things I learned in the book. The book has there's a lot of ways, but from what Dean Hurley told me, although I don't know if this made the book. It's funny because I haven't I'm reading the book now, so it's funny. I don't remember reading this, so this might have got cut. But Dean tells the story of them working on the DVD release of Wild at Heart, and that they sent all of the footage to the house. And he said to David, should we just capture this? And David said, no, let's just get what we need and send it back. And so the chances of all that footage, so there is no high res capturing of all that stuff. So it would be unlikely for a special edition with all, like, a missing pieces type sort of thing to come, because they didn't. That's why the deleted scenes on the blind box are so shitty, because they didn't go back to they didn't capture all that.
Got it.
So unless someone else did it, I guess that could happen. Maybe MGM would just give it to someone to do, but all that stuff's going to be tied up, I would think.
Either that, or the floodgates are going to open and they're just going to start releasing. Maybe Disney will finally get off its butt and release the straight story on 4K.
It'd be nice, but usually what happens is they just release the pilot again.
Yeah, with the Zeta A box set coming out again. I saw your post about, it was like they're doing 2 different releases within a week of each other, and it's like, why? Like, just put out the full version if you're going to do that. You don't have to do the TV cut over here and
I know. It's embarrassing, and I make fun of it all through my book. I in all of my books, actually. I think in every one of my books I've written about it, I make a crack about how many times. I know when I interviewed Mark Frost, I told him, like, I basically must have paid for a shed or something in your house from the amount of times I bought the pilot of Twin Peaks. So.
Yeah. You're talking about the music and Fire Walk with Me, and another thing about it, I between that and the sound effects, it's wall to wall. It's just like, it's, when Lynch talks about a 2-hour of a composition piece in a film, it's like Fire Walk with Me is that. So what was your reaction the first time you saw Fire Walk with Me? Did you instantaneously, because I know um, feel a real draw with the character of Laura Palmer and Cheryl Lee playing her. Did that movie just hit you right away? Did it take some time? Because I remember it came out in August, but by February it was already on video, which was almost unheard of in 91 to 92, or I'm sorry, 92 93.
Right. I loved it. I saw it on opening night, August 28th. It wasn't crowded.
Yeah.
It was a sparse theater on that Friday night. And the people I went with hated it. For real, hated it. And I loved it. And I didn't say a word. It was one of those things where I was just like, I actually thought there was maybe something wrong with me, that I loved it. And we went out in the parking lot. And there were, there wasn't a lot of people, but people we didn't know. All these Twin Peaks fans were talking, and every single person hated it. And I was thinking, I don't know, I thought it was pretty good. So I snuck back on that Wednesday and saw it again at the matinee by myself. I was literally the only person in the entire theater. Only time that's ever happened to me in my whole life. And it was really kind of scary. And I loved it again. And I didn't tell my girlfriend I went, because she hated it so badly. I told no one. And then I just loved it. I loved it from the first time in the same way that I love it today. Like, I feel like I got it immediately. I got Deer Meadow. I feel some people don't get Deer Meadow. Now they do, because all of us have been talking about this for so long. Even the acts in the television, there weren't critics talking about that. Like, people weren't getting that, or that Deer Meadow is the antithesis of Twin Peaks. They weren't getting it. To me, it played like I wanted it to. I loved it, always.
I remember the time people in my high school, the ones who did see it, would say to me, either Lynch should have done a 2-hour Teresa Banks movie, or it should have been just a 2-hour Laura Palmer movie. What's this, 2 stories? And of course, when you look at Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive, that becomes the driving force of 2 stories telling the same story.
Yeah, I never got why people didn't like the beginning. And I don't think it would be as good if it was Cooper. It's better that it's Chris Isaak.
It doesn't make any sense for Cooper to box the sheriff.
Oh, that would have been horrible.
I think I might have walked out if that had happened, because that doesn't make any sense. It makes sense for Chris Isaak because he also was a boxer, and I always assumed that had been written for Chris Isaak upon the casting. But no, it's the original draft has Cooper boxing the sheriff, and that doesn't make any sense with this character whatsoever. I mean, you could see maybe why Kyle was like, "I'll pass." But yeah, I mean, I remember seeing it. I really liked it. I think, a little bummed because I knew that a lot of the cast members had been cut out. I didn't know the context of it. I hadn't read the script, but I really liked what I saw. I've always liked what I saw in Fire Walk with Me, but I kept thinking, like, there's more to this. I know. And then of course, when I saw the script, obviously there's a lot of scenes in the script that never were shot or whatever, but I started to get a sense of, like, okay, I can see why they cut this back a lot. And of course I was there in the early 2000s with the petition to get the and then that first New Line Cinema DVD came out with nothing on it but that documentary, which I love to tease Josh about, because that's how I first saw him. I didn't know who Josh Eisenstadt was. I never went to the fest. So I'm like, who is this guy sitting there with Michael J. Anderson talking about all the layers of mystery and all that, right? But I was really disappointed but by that DVD. I just felt like it was kind of just thrown together. However, what some people may not know is that the New Line Cinema logo, which has now been removed for the Blu-rays, Lynch put like an additional 10 seconds of wind and storm sounds over that before it transitioned into Angelo's music. But all that is gone now with the Blu-ray, and now it just begins with the M2 So if you get the New Line VHS, Laserdisc, or original DVD, you're a completionist. That opening 10 seconds has more sound effects.
Interesting. I didn't notice that.
But and then of course when the missing pieces came out, I'm curious to know about how you did that, because I didn't see it in the theater like a lot of people I know did. But I remember just getting the Blu-ray and saying to my wife, please reserve all comments until after it's over. Let me just sit in the dark and take this in. This was because at that point we didn't know there was going to be another season. So I was like, this is my last chance to see anything new Twin Peaks. Let me enjoy this. And I mean, she watched it. She loved it too. What was your reaction? Because when I first saw that trailer for the missing pieces, I like almost started crying because it looked so good, right? And I was like, it didn't look like the Wild at Heart thrown together work print scenes. It was like, oh my God, this is going to be incredible. Why don't you take us a little, because I know when you were working on your Fire Walk With Me book, I remember you put out a tweet that said, should I talk about the missing pieces? Now, I wrote back, I responded back saying, please, you have to. This would be important. I didn't know at the time the way your book was shaped, where it was like a personal, take on it. I thought what you were doing was sort of like a big overview of the making of the film. So obviously when I read your book, I was like, oh, if I'd known this was the approach Scott was going to take, I wouldn't have said, yes, take on the missing piece.
It was good that I did it, but I really wasn't planning on it.
Right.
I really wasn't. But then in the end, I'm glad that I covered it. I was working at Time Warner Cable at that time, and I took a half day's vacation, and I came home, and I got a chair, and I put it by the mailbox, and I sat outside and waited for the mail to come.
Okay.
I knew about what time the mail would come, and I really did take a chair, and I sat.
Just like David Lynch and the cow.
And I waited for it to come because I wanted to watch it while everyone was at work and school. And I came in and watched it by myself. I didn't want to watch it with anyone. I wanted it to pour over me. And I loved it. I mean, for me, that was the return. Because you actually did go back to Twin Peaks in the missing pieces. The return, you really don't go back to Twin Peaks. But in the missing pieces, you do. That was my return. That gave you what you wanted for coming back to it. Like everyone, I think this should be in, oh, that should be out, this should have never happened, whatever. You have all those things, but in the end, they are perfect as is. Like it's great.
It was so wonderful to see what Josh talks about, the many layers, because there's whole segments of Laura's character that, because of the time constraints, they couldn't put in. And it's like, oh, wow, I wish they had that aspect of Laura in the film as well, because Cheryl Lee knocks out so many different emotions. I think you say in your book, to you, that's like as perfect of a performance in film that you can think of.
Yeah, I think it is the single best male or female performance ever captured on film. No, I have no problem saying that. I remember I told that to Mary Sweeney, and she said, you can't say that. Like, how could you make that claim? I said, I just did. And I believe it 100%.
I'll be honest with you. When I read that part in the book, I remember thinking, why would Scott put that in the book? Like she just, but then after, I don't know you.
Oh, because when Mary said that I was wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Because I love that. I love doing that in the book. And I'm also not any more important than anyone else. In this new book, Dean Hurley and I don't really get along.
Okay.
And in our beginning, we just do not hit it off. And I love that. Any other writer would take that the hell out of the book, but not me. I love that. And I want that back and forth and that realism. I mean, Mary Sweeney thought I was nuts. When I interviewed Kenny Landrum in this book, he played the piano on all the tracks. and we go through the chord progression and theme from Fire Walk with Me, and I come up with like this Scott theory, and he just laughed at me. He thought I was utterly insane, and he said, "Whatever you want to believe, buddy," and that's in the book too. I love when someone tells me I'm wrong.
So what I was trying to say with that though is that when I read your book, see, I don't know you, but I've seen, interviews with you or clips with you talking about your stuff. Now I kind of get a sense of your sense of humor, right? I remember you did a video once where you were packing up the Blue Rose magazine and you're sitting there in like your t-shirt and shorts and you're stamping things, and I was just like going, I was like, who is this guy? Again, I don't know you, right? I'm only seeing what you choose to share with us. And so I was just like, when I read that, I was like, I can't believe Scott left that in the book. But then after seeing you and hearing you and talking with you and stuff, it's like, it makes perfect sense why you leave it in, because that's the gold nuggets in there. It's like those kind of things that you wouldn't get in any other book, those kind of interactions.
Because people try to put on the air of being perfect and being right, and I'm never right, and I don't ever want to be right. There's a Warren Zevon song that says, "Don't let us get old, don't let us get simple or right," I think is what it is. And like, there's nothing worse than being right. Oh my gosh, that's a horrible thing to be. I want to be inquisitive. I want to learn. I don't want my thing to be right, especially about Twin Peaks. Isn't there some people always say, "Did you watch this 4.5 hour YouTube video where they explain all of Twin Peaks?" And I say, there is no video that explains all of Twin Peaks. If someone told you I have the answer to Twin Peaks, right there, they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. I've gotten a lot of pushback online whenever I make fun of that particular video.
I've not seen it. Maybe it's great, but I can tell you one thing: it doesn't explain Twin Peaks.
I will concur with you on that. So obviously Sheryl Lee is fantastic as Laura Palmer. Let me just ask you real quick, what did you think of her? I think she's wonderful as this as well, but your take on her performance as Madeline Ferguson, because it's so different. When you watch Madeline, you can't comprehend that's the same actress that plays Laura at all.
I'll admit something. I didn't know it was the same actress in 1990. I didn't know who Sheryl Lee was. I hardly knew who Laura Palmer was. I had no idea in the first episode when she first shows up and everything. I didn't know. I mean, she really does play it completely differently. I agree. I think it is underappreciated. And it probably was easier for Sheryl because she hadn't crafted Laura Palmer yet. So in a way, I mean, she was just laying there doing nothing. And I mean, I do think the worst scene of, certainly for Sheryl Lee in all of Twin Peaks is the first time we see her as Laura Palmer with James. And she's like, "Do you want to know why I'm so happy today?" Like, I always hated, it just made me not like Laura Palmer. But the way I view that now is that is what James saw. I don't think there's anything truthful about that scene.
That's just his idyllic memory, right?
Yeah, that is filtered through James. But I'm just saying, as again, the very first time I saw it, I was kind of like, ugh. But I think Sheryl Lee can do anything. I mean, she's the best actress of our generation. I mean, Patricia Arquette is very close, but they are both titans in from their generation, I believe.
I'm glad you mentioned Patricia Arquette, because one of the things I found so interesting about your book in Lost Highway was how you just flat out admit, like, the first time you saw it, you didn't like it, and then you went back to
finish
it. What was it about that first viewing that made you just go, not for me?
It was the saxophone solo. It was It was Bill Pullman's Bats in Angry Hell or something, Bats in Teeth or whatever it is. Now I'm getting Birds in Hell my brain is in Twin Peaks music right now, but something like that, Bats with Teeth or something. That was so obnoxious and everything, and it was so slow moving. I was It was the first movie I watched after having twins. I had to watch it between 2-hour feedings in the afternoon when it came out. I put that videotape in. It was so slow. That noise, I was like, I'm taking a nap. I just ejected that thing, and I didn't watch it until I was doing the Blue Rose. We were prepping the Women of Lynch,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to help come up with what female characters we were going to pick from. And I had never seen Lost Highway. And I wasn't going to tell John Thorne and Courtney Stallings I had never seen Lost Highway. And we're 7 issues into doing a magazine about David Lynch.
Right.
And I was like, I better watch this movie. Oh, it's going to suck. And then I was just like, oh my God, it's so good. Like, I was sleep deprived. I was a new parent with twins. It was just not the time to watch Lost Highway.
Absolutely. And also sometimes you'll watch something and it's just not the right time, like you said, in your life. And then 10 years goes by and you go back and watch it and you go, wow, this is incredible. Like, how come I didn't see this at the time? And I think Lost Highway, I mean, David Lynch's work is like this in general, in my opinion, but Lost Highway has aged very, very well.
It's spectacular. I mean,
it's definitely a 90s timepiece with the music, because it's very specific with that sound.
Well, it's his only film that he used current music for.
Right.
And that's very interesting as well.
Absolutely. But yeah, it's one of those movies where, when I talked to Sabrina and I asked her, I said, how come for the Criterion release, everybody kept waiting for some sort of deleted scenes from Lost Highway because we see some being filmed in that Pretty as a Picture documentary and all that. And she said, honestly, Cameron, it was just a bunch of comings and goings, and there wasn't really a lot to put on there, so we just decided not to. But yeah, it's that's literally one hell of a movie. And it's like,
that's said for years, Wild at Heart was my favorite. I don't count Fire Walk with Me. So when I talk about favorite David Lynch movies, Fire Walk with Me is of course my favorite. But you remove that because that's Twin Peaks. I don't think it's even fair. But Wild at Heart was always my favorite. But now I would say Lost Highway is my favorite film.
What about Lost Highway? And I know you wrote a whole book about this, but what about Lost Highway like hits you deeper now? Like what do you find so attractive that makes it rise to the top?
I think it's the last time David Lynch was disciplined. And I like disciplined David Lynch more than free range David Lynch. And it hit me when I was working on the book. I don't think it really hit me when I watched it when we were prepping Women of Lynch. But when I was working on the book, that is a crackerjack ending. It's a David Lynch movie that ends with a car chase. That's
Right.
pretty crazy. I mean, he lands Lost Highway. I think hands down, it's his best ending. Every other ending, including Fire Walk with Me, has a mysterious, open-aired, what happened, what year is this type ending. That's what he likes. But Lost Highway ends. I mean, that guy is being chased by the cops and they are coming to get him and he's frying in the electric chair. It's over. You don't see the end of that movie and be like, I don't know what happened. And I think I like that. It lands. I guess Straight Story has an ending, but they don't say anything. They just sit there. You don't get the closure. So I guess Straight Story's close, but he didn't write that. But Lost Highway to me is his best ending. What do you think? Do you want to argue with me? Do you have an ending that is stronger than Lost Highway?
Oh my goodness. Well, I will say this: Lost Highway has one of my favorite shots ever at that ending when it does that hard cut to the LA desert and the cops are chasing him and you see the car is racing towards the camera and then the camera comes down off the whatever, I can't remember what I'm trying to say now, but the crane comes down off the crane and I know it's just a pan and off the crane, but it's so electrifying with that music and those cars. That's not under cranking to make it look like they're going fast. They're really going whatever 130 miles an hour. You know, it's like the Blues Brothers all of a sudden right now, and it's just so exciting. And I remember that being a jolt in the theater. But as for best endings, I don't know. I mean it's kind of the way he brought back Love Me Tender at the end of Wild at Heart to me, because it's just kind of dropped in there about a half hour. Why didn't you sing me Love Me Tender? And then it comes back. That I remember just being electrified by that as well. I think the wraparound, I know some people don't like it, but I love the whole wraparound of Blue Velvet where it comes back to the same imagery, you know, and then it concludes with Dorothy with her child, and then it's the you know, the how the camera just goes right up to the blue sky. I mean, he ends movies pretty well. Yeah. I will say that Lost Highway does stand out because it is so different than the rest of his movies.
Yeah, it's just like so fast paced.
Yeah.
And I also feel that way about Lost Highway. It's definitely slow in the front part. But it moves. I don't know. I maybe it's because I never watched it until 2017. Was that when I don't remember what year we did Women of Lynch. If it was 17 or 18. So it might be because it's the one I've seen the least that I love it so much now. Although now I've seen it a lot of times. But I don't know.
Well, also when you saw it on video, it was pan and scan, and it looked terrible. It looked terrible.
Absolutely horrible.
First of all, it's so dark in those opening scenes, and then you're only getting 50% of the image. So It was like, it was just a waste of my time. You remember horrible. You remember at the end of Wild at Heart on video, they couldn't get them and the credits together, so they stretched them up. Remember that?
Yeah. Oh, I remember that. I mean, I remember getting to see Wild at Heart. Well, the whole Wild at Heart on video was also horrible. The color. My favorite shot in Wild at Heart is when Lula wants to get music on the radio, and then they jump out and the music's all hard, and then it turns into this beautiful piece, and the sunset comes up and they kiss, and it's just beautiful. Well, that scene was horrible on VHS.
Oh yeah.
The orange was just like bleeding like this when the sun comes, and it was a nightmare. So I'm so glad that those movies have been protected.
Yeah. So when you saw it, whether it be 2017, 2018, one, how did you find it? Because it wasn't available. I mean, you could get like, I guess, a German Blu-ray of it, but how did you find Lost Highway?
So when I went to the UK Fest, I won it.
Oh,
I won the Europe Lost Highway. So I had, I had a world. I don't even remember what they were called. The ones that could play any DVD. There was a word for that that I'm forgetting. And I had that DVD player that could play. So I could watch it off DVD. So it was it's a little light. It's not as good as the new one that Sabrina and David worked on, which is freaking beautiful. But it was it was decent.
Right.
I watched that one.
Remember when Kino was going to put it out on Blu-ray and David Lynch made a statement like, "Don't buy this."
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And they were just like taken aback, and all the special features that they were planning got stripped off of it. And man. So I know you've tackled other subject matters, as we talked about, moonlighting, sports. So what made you want to come back to not only a Twin Peaks book, but the music? I know you're very passionate about the music, but what made you settle on the music for the third book as opposed to, let's say, instead of doing Fire Walk Me, how come you didn't do the music as the first book?
It's kind of a funny story. I'm a big vinyl listener. I love vinyl. And so I contacted Sabrina, and I was like, Sabrina, I've had this idea for weeks, and I'm just going to pitch it to you. I want you and me to produce a box set of Twin Peaks music. I'll do the liner notes. You can produce it and work out the contracts, and I'll curate the tracks that have never come out. And Sabrina responded, all of the music from Twin Peaks has been released on vinyl. And so I was like, oh, this is awkward. So I went back and I said, well, Actually, that's not really true. There are 212 tracks that have never been released anywhere, really. And she said those have been discarded or decided, David's decided what would come out. And, there's no reason for them. They've all come out. And I was like, people have forgotten that 75% of the music of Twin Peaks is not protected. It's not on Apple. It's not on Spotify. It's never come out on CD. It's not on a vinyl. Most likely, I don't think they're copyrighted. Kenny Landrum isn't getting paid. Al Regney isn't getting paid. These songs are nowhere. And that's when I started the book. Because I was like, no one cares. And I don't think other people realize that, and I don't want to hear Falling Again. I mean, it's fine, but it's like the pilot to me. Like, why are we releasing the same stuff? So that started me right then. I started contacting Dean Hurley, and I was like, I got to interview people. I knew he worked on the Twin Peaks archive, and I was like, I got to get Dean Hurley. And that just started, that was why. It was just this idea that if the people who own the music I actually don't think anyone does, to be honest with you. I think those songs are not owned by anyone. If I was a little braver, I'd just make a vinyl myself and see if they could sue me, because I kind of think those songs are nowhere. I don't think there's contracts for them. They've never come out. So if Warner Brothers owned them, they would have released them. I just don't think they are. But that was it. So I was like, if I don't do this, no one's going to, because I might be the only person who's thinking about this.
So when your initial thought of doing the book and now it's coming out, would you say a year and a half? How long has this process been for this particular book?
I think I thought of it in June.
Oh, wow.
And the book was done by the end of August.
Wow.
I'm kind of a psycho about that. And then I might have, I don't know, it's been done for a while, and I just looked at my interview with Dean Hurley. Was my first interview for the book, and I did it in June. So,
wow. Well, you already know the material so well that it just poured out of you.
Yeah, I didn't have to do any research for the book. I really didn't. I mean, the hardest part was just double checking that I didn't miss anything. That was my fear. Like, I went to Ross Duddle has a wonderful site called the Twin Peaks Soundtrack Design or something like that.
Yeah.
And I double checked every track he had. I have a good friend, Daniel Knox. He also had all of the things from davidlynch.com. And I said, can I see your list and compare it to my? I just didn't want to miss anything.
Right.
And who knows? Believe me, if I miss something, 2 weeks from now, there's going to be some jackhole on Twitter being like, you didn't have this. Now, I will say I didn't do bootleg things. These are the real songs, not because some fan ripped it off something and mixed it themselves. I don't cover that stuff.
Okay. Well, I guarantee you, I will not be one of those people who contact you. I think I'm going to eat this book up. I just love this idea, and you have so many really cool chapters here. Now, do you go in, like, how did you decide the order? Are you going chronologically?
It's chronological. So the first, Brad Dukes writes the foreword. I'll just go down and tell you what's in this. So Brad Dukes writes the foreword. This is his first time he's written about Twin Peaks since he finished his book. So it's a really big deal that he's returning to Twin Peaks. Prelude, Angry Young Man is sort of the story that I'm saying, that how angry it made me that these songs weren't available for many years, and they're, again, not available. So that's a Billy Joel song. Then we start in chapter 1 is 1989. So I just basically tell you what happened in 1989. I go through every month what David Lynch did. It is fascinating. It's insane. It seems like I'm making it up. Then we do Floating into the Night, which is the first Julie Cruz. Then the third chapter is an interview with both the music editors. So David Slusser did the pilot and Wild at Heart, And Laurie Eschler was the music editor on Twin Peaks, the series, and Fire Walk with Me. Laurie Eschler is the unsung hero of all Twin Peaks. She's going to be a superstar after this book. Then we go to the soundtrack from Twin Peaks, which is the first soundtrack. Then we do the director's trio, which is an interview with Mark Frost, Dwayne Dunham, and Tim Hunter about how directors scored Twin Peaks.
That's really
then
exciting.
We do soundtrack. Did I already do that? Oh yeah. Then we do Fire Walk with Me. Then music from season 2, which came out in 2007. And that's such a funny freaking, I make fun of that one because all these titles are horrible. Music from Twin Peaks season 2 and more. And so much of it is not even from season 2. What are you going to do? And then an interview with Dean Hurley. Then we do the Twin Peaks archive. This is the longest chapter I've ever written in my life. It's 112 pages or something ridiculous.
Oh my goodness.
It's so crazy because there are 212 songs that were released. Then we have another interview with Dean Hurley. This is about the return. The first interview is just about the Twin Peaks archive. Then we do the Bang Bang album, then the score to the return, and then the last chapter is The Voice of Love, which is Julie Cruz's other album.
Yes, and to be honest, I had never heard it until I saw you make a post about the and then the name escapes me right now too, but the opening music of Fire Walk with
Love.
Yeah, Die for Love. I had never heard that song before ever until I saw
fans haven't.
I saw a post that you made about it. I was like, what is that? And of course I just went on YouTube and looked it up, and there it was, and all of a sudden I was just right back in the Twin Peaks vibe. Right. And it was just like, I have never heard this. And I think what happened was I had the first album, and I think somebody said, oh yeah, Lynch and her and Badalamenti did another album, but it wasn't received well. And so I just assumed, I don't know what, I guess I just never really looked for it. And then I love it. I love that album.
Yeah, I think it's better than the first album, honestly.
Yeah, I was really just taken aback because I had heard so many bad things about it, and then I popped it in. And I was driving around town, and I was like, "This is incredible! What are people talking about?" But I'm an Uber fan.
If you're a Fire Walk with Me fan, you've got 3 Fire Walk with Me songs: "The Voice of Love" and "She Would Die for Love," and then "Questions in a World of Blue" are all on that album. Plus, there's "Wild at Heart," where you get "Up in Flames" and "Cool Cat Walk." So 5 out of the 10 songs are connected to either Twin Peaks or Wild at Heart. So for fans to skip it is just, it's not, that drives me crazy. So that's what I really wanted from this book. The secret of this book is the Sycamore Trees. So that was the other thing that led me down this path. My whole life, we've been told that David Lynch got the script for episode 29, threw it out, and improv'd an episode. Well, I'm a musician, not a good one, but a musician. And I thought, how do you improv a song with lyrics? And Jimmy Scott, little Jimmy Scott, he just improv'd little Jimmy Scott out of his butt, and they sang Sycamore Trees in episode 29. You can't improv that. And so I was like, I want to know, when was Sycamore Trees written? When was it recorded? What is it from? Was it written for episode 29? And so everyone I interview in the book, I ask that question. And that is the mystery of the book. I pose the question in the beginning of the book, and you don't get the answer until The Voice of Love, which is the last. You get pieces all the way down. It becomes this big mystery. And I tell the reader many times, don't skip ahead. Don't read ahead to find the answer. Just let this book flow over you, because everyone has a different story. Even Kevin Laffey, I interviewed him. He was the A&R guy from Warner Brothers. So he's the one who signed Julie and David Lynch. And I thought, well, he's going to have nothing to do with Sycamore Trees. But I thought, I'll ask him. And he gives me a piece of the puzzle that no one else had. And it leads you to another thing. So I won't in any interviews or when I'm out and about, I'm not going to tell anyone the answer of Sycamore Trees, but I will say you'll get an answer and you're going to really have questions too. It's very interesting.
Well, my question has always been Sycamore Trees being on the Fire Walk With Me album when there's only like a few chords of it when Leland walks into the Black Lodge at the end. And I was like going, is this song going to be in the movie or is this just kind of a holdover from the series? And I mean, it seems like it's mostly a holdover from the series, but
yeah, I make fun of that too. And also the titles, my God, they're horrible for the Return soundtracks. I couldn't tell you what the titles are right now. And while I was working on the book, I could never tell. I had to have it in a separate document when I had to say which one it was, and I'd go in and copy it and paste it. All the naming of Twin Peaks is stupid and wrong, and all the placement of songs are wrong, and nobody thought it through. I also do that with The Return. I reorganize the two albums as what they should be, because what came out is not very logical.
Now, I know you don't read social media, but there was a while back on Twitter, I did a post that said, Mark, because I wrote this to Mark Frost, can you please, just to end all discussions about this, how did this German cable company come up with these like titles for the episodes? Because it just seems ridiculous that some person would just come up with these titles. And Mark Frost wrote back, and it blew my mind, it blew John Thorne's mind, that the episode titles that we have on streaming that are not on the DVDs or the Blu-rays, because they were never supposed to be there, that's why it's episode 1, episode 2, is because they were joking titles that Frost gave to the crew while they were shooting the episode, so they knew which one was what. But somehow, though, that page got leaked, and so that's what people use for the episode titles. But they were never supposed to be the episode titles.
Interesting. Yeah, I will never call them by that, and it does suck now because when people stream it, and then I say, well, I mean, episode 8 is classic. Well, for them, episode 8 is episode 7.
Right.
And it is dumb. And I will never call it May the Giant Be With You or whatever the stupid titles are. It's just horrible. No.
Yeah. I got pushback online about that too once because I said those titles are stupid. And people were like, why you got to be so negative? If people like calling them that, I said, whatever. Just call them whatever you want to call them. To me, I know John Thorne, Josh Eisenstadt, myself, we always just say, episode 14, man, that's hardcore.
Yeah. So. I mean, 14, 16,
right,
29, 8, 7, 2.
Yeah.
Those all mean something.
They do. And yeah, we've all kind of said to each other, like, yeah, the real hardcore fans when they say that, kind of when they have that kind of lingo. Now, I saw you made a post earlier. This book is already number 1.
Today it was number 1 and number 2.
Wow, how'd that happen? How's it
because
1 and
the
2?
Paperback and the hardback.
Oh, okay.
But the thing about Amazon is it refigures that every hour. So whether I'm still number 1 and number 2, I don't know.
Right.
Someone was asking me for a link and I went out and it was number 1 at that moment. So that is very cool. I'm very excited about that. It's the number 1 new release in TV books because I did a paperback and a hardback. The hardback is super expensive and I tell everyone, do not buy it. There's no reason to buy it. I made it just for me. It's in full color and it has all the MP3 icons because I wanted to have them in my book. And so I'm making it up through Amazon, but Amazon prices that. So it's like $70.
Oh, dang.
And it's a lot more pages because I put in so many pictures. But I said, don't buy it. And of course, somebody did send me a thing and say, that's ridiculous. why are you charging so much? And I bought all your books and I'm like, don't buy it. I said, don't buy it. I'm telling you. I even have a thing that says, this is crazy. Don't buy this one. Buy the paperback. I wanted it because I like my books in color, and it's going, this matters to me.
Right.
But you should just get the paperback. And the paperback is number one. It's crazy to me that the hardback was number two as well. But I don't know if it still is.
I like the idea that you do those options, the color options, the black and white options. I know you do that a lot on your website as well. That's just really cool to give people that.
Well, I'm only doing it for me. It's because I want my books in color. I like it. I don't do it for anyone else. And I tell people, don't buy that. Get the black and white, or get the Kindle or the audiobook, whatever you want. Or
so when does this book officially drop?
There's no such thing anymore, but it comes out through Simon & Schuster in June. So it's coming out in June. But I'm getting copies through Amazon Print on Demand, because once I was going to Twin Peaks Day and they wanted me to do a thing there, and Josh asked me to do a panel, I got to have books for sale. Like, I'm not going to go and do a panel and not a book. So people who have pre-ordered it, I'm trying to ship them out. The people who bought the paperback ones, those are all out. I haven't got the hardback ones yet. They're supposed to come Friday. I don't know if they will. And I'm hoping we're doing a workshop at the North Bend Trading Company on Saturday.
This is it, right?
Yep. Saturday, February 22nd at noon at the North Bend Trading Company. M. Marinelli and I are doing a free workshop. We're offering an online class all year, but this is sort of us testing it out. At noon, we're doing a thing on dreams. And then Friday at 1, Josh Eisenstadt is interviewing me on a panel about the music.
Well, that's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah. So have you been thinking about what your next project's going to be, or are you just taking some time off and while this thing's getting launched?
Nothing serious. I have a couple ideas, but because we recently went with Simon & Schuster, one of the rules from them is we have to do a book a month. So I design all the books and things. So I'm really going to be busy now. So I don't know when I personally will write another book, because I'm going to have a lot to do coming up. I'm going to be busy this year. So,
but your publishing company, it's doing very well, because a lot of the books you've been coming out with lately have been getting a lot of great acclaim. I know Emily's book just won an award, right?
Yeah, it won best. I'm gonna get in trouble. I think it was best entertainment book. It's funny. I should know. Let's just say best book ever.
There you go.
Yeah, it won, which was very cool. And then we did a book on the music of Barbra Streisand, and that got a lot of awards. We didn't win any, but it did get nominated for.
That's right.
So we're moving. Yeah, it's growing. It's crazy at all. That's crazy.
You did the book about the real life crime of Twin Peaks, right? With David.
David Bushman wrote that. The Hazel. You're getting in trouble with all the people that I know.
But didn't it come out through your publishing company?
No, he actually went with someone else on that. But I think that was nominated for some awards too.
It was a fantastic book.
We had it up there. Is it The Murder of Hazel Drew? I don't know what it's called. I don't know. I'm in so much trouble. This shows it's hard because I do a lot, so I don't always keep those things up.
Yeah, I'm wondering how, when you have your hand in so many cookie jars, how do you keep it all straight?
Well, part of it is I don't do a lot of social media. Like, everybody sees things before me. It's like, that's the thing I tell people. Like, I'm working all the time. Like, all I do is work. I work all day. And I'm so happy that I get to. So,
yeah. Well, Scott, thank you so much, seriously, for taking the time to talk with me. I'm really excited. Everybody, pre-order this book, Always Music in the Air, The Sounds of Twin Peaks. You can get it through Amazon, but also through Is it Fayetteville Mafia Press or through Simon & Schuster?
There, or bluerosemag.com, or if through Amazon, you can do that as well, especially if you're not in America. You won't have to pay the horrible shipping costs that I make nothing from. That's just what it literally costs for something to go. Also, people can check out from the Blue Rose YouTube page our David Lynch memorial that we did, the fan memorial. That's up on the YouTube page as well. So, and then we've got the workshop that Em and I are doing. We only have 17 seats left. It's kind of been selling like crazy. We just are sort of trying this out, but obviously with all the David Lynch things, people are, I think, hungry for it. We're doing 4 workshops through Zoom that people can attend. So lots going on right now.
The memorial that you hosted with Emily last weekend was so moving and so incredible, and so many wonderful stories. And definitely check out that video. It's incredibly emotional. As Scott has said online, be prepared to cry.
Yeah.
there are moments where I never knew what someone was going to say, but like I was personally affected by every single person, and I've haven't forgotten it. And it's been a few days now, but it's still like ingrained in my head, like what some of the people talked about and said and shared. And it was incredibly impactful. I'm so glad you guys do it. And I wish you guys the best on your workshop, and all the best up there to the Real Twin Peaks Festival with you guys up there as well. But Scott, thank you again. I really appreciate it. Make sure to buy his books. Check out all the other wonderful books that have come out from his publishing company, because like they're all quality. So be sure to check them out. So Scott, thank you again. Appreciate it.
It was so much fun.
All right, everybody, have a wonderful day. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, and we will see you soon. Take it easy. Take care. Bye-bye.